Apache neighbor warned. "I can't love you," the rancher answered. "Then just be my partner." The sun hung low in the sky over the rolling hills of the American West, casting long shadows across the land that stretched out in every direction. Sam Bennett, a young rancher in his mid-20s, sat tall on his horse, gazing at the land his father had worked for years. The ranch was his life, its weathered barns, wide open pastures, and the familiar routine of cattle and horses all he had ever known. His father, a gruff yet kind-hearted man, had taught him everything he needed to know about life on the ranch. Sam worked hard, taking pride in the life he had built, but something was missing, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. It was a late afternoon when Sam's life began to change. He had been riding his horse through the dusty trails that ran along the border of his property when he spotted a small group of people near the edge of the river. They were gathered around a campfire, their faces partially obscured by the shadows of the trees. Sam stopped, watching them from a distance. He knew immediately who they were, the Apache tribe that lived nearby. They had lived in the area for generations, their land stretching far into the desert. The Bennett Ranch was a new neighbor to them, a place that had only recently been settled by Sam's family. As Sam approached, he saw a woman sitting alone by the fire, her face illuminated by the flickering light. She had long, dark hair, braided down her back, and a presence that seemed to hold the stillness of the land itself. Her name was Nia, and though Sam had heard stories about her, he had never met her before. She was known for her strength and independence, someone who had earned the respect of her people. Sam's horse moved forward, almost of its own accord, as if drawn to her. He couldn't help himself. There was something magnetic about her. As he dismounted and walked toward the fire, Nia looked up at him, her eyes sharp and unyielding. She didn't smile, nor did she greet him with the warmth he expected. Instead, she looked at him with a cool, steady gaze as though weighing him, studying him from head to toe. "Sam Bennett," she said, her voice calm but firm. It wasn't a question. It was more like a statement of fact. Sam nodded, feeling the weight of her eyes on him. "That's me. I live just over the hill. I wanted to come over, introduce myself." Nia didn't respond right away. She glanced back at the fire, poking it gently with a stick, as if to give herself a moment to consider his presence. Sam stood there, feeling awkward, unsure of what to say next. He had always been good with animals, good with the land, but with people, especially strangers, he sometimes didn't know what to do. Finally, Nia spoke again. "I know who you are," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving the fire. "You're the rancher from the Bennett family." "I've heard about you." Sam shifted uncomfortably. "And what have you heard?" he asked, trying to keep the tone light. Nia's eyes flickered up to meet his for just a second. "That you're stubborn like most of your kind. You come here, settle land that wasn't yours to take, and now you think you can just keep it all to yourself." Sam didn't flinch. He had heard worse from others in town. "I'm just trying to make a living," he said. "My father worked hard for this land, and I'm doing the same." Nia seemed to soften a little, though she still held a certain distance. "It's not just land. It's a way of life. People like you come in, but you never understand what it means to live off the land the way my people do." Sam felt a pang of guilt, though he wasn't sure why. He had never intended to disrespect anyone's way of life. But he also couldn't deny the stubborn pride that ran through him, the desire to succeed and protect what he had built. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the fire crackling was the only thing that broke the silence. Finally, Nia looked at him again, her expression unreadable. "You should go back to your ranch," she said softly. "Your people don't belong here." Sam's heart sank. He had been expecting resistance, but not this. A woman who so clearly saw him as an outsider, as someone who didn't belong. He had heard stories about how the Apache people viewed settlers like him, but this was different. Nia wasn't just dismissing him, she was warning him. "I'm not going anywhere," Sam said quietly, though his words lacked the confidence he had hoped they would carry. This is my home now, and I'd like to think we can coexist, find a way to get along. Nia looked at him long and hard. Coexist, she asked. You want us to get along, but you don't understand. We can't be friends. We can't love each other, Sam Bennett. The words stung, though Sam tried not to let them show. He wasn't sure why it hurt so much. Maybe it was the way she said it so calmly, like it was a fact that couldn't be changed. He had thought maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something more between them, something beyond the walls of their different worlds. But Nia had already drawn the line. I don't need you to love me, Sam said, his voice low but firm. I just need you to be my pa. Nia's brows furrowed slightly, her lips pressing into a thin line. What does that mean? She asked, her tone cautious. It means, Sam began, that I don't care about what others think. I'm not asking for your love, Nia. I'm asking for a chance to be family, to share this land, this world. It doesn't have to be love. It can just be us, helping each other. Nia looked at him for a long time, her eyes searching his face as if trying to figure out if he was serious. Sam held her gaze, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over him. He wasn't sure where this feeling was coming from, but in that moment, he knew that what he had just said wasn't just about the ranch or land. It was about something deeper, something that was hard to put into words. For a long time, Nia didn't speak. Finally, she nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly. We'll see, she said softly. We'll see what happens. Sam's heart raced, but he tried to keep his composure. That's all I'm asking, he said. Just a chance. As he turned to leave, he glanced back at Nia. She was still sitting by the fire, watching him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, the world felt very still, as if everything, the land, the people, the fire, was holding its breath. Sam mounted his horse, ready to return to his ranch, but as he rode away, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something important. He didn't know where this would lead, or if it would lead anywhere at all, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't forget Nia. And somehow, he didn't want to. After that first meeting, Sam couldn't stop thinking about Nia. The way she had looked at him, so intense and guarded, had left an impression on him that he couldn't shake. He tried to convince himself that it was just curiosity, that it was just another passing encounter, but the truth was, something deep inside him had been stirred. He had been raised to respect people, to treat them fairly, but Nia was different. She wasn't like the women he had met before, those who were easy to talk to, polite, even friendly. Nia was distant, almost like she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Yet there was something undeniably magnetic about her. He found himself wanting to know more. The days after their encounter were quiet. Sam continued with his daily work on the ranch, tending to the cattle and horses, but his thoughts kept drifting to Nia. He would often find himself riding along the border of his property, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Sometimes he would see her, just in the distance, walking along the river with her people, her head held high as if she belonged to the land itself. There was a quiet strength in her that Sam admired, but every time he approached, she would disappear into the trees, vanishing like a shadow. One afternoon, about a week later, Sam decided to visit Nia again. He didn't know why he felt so drawn to her, but something inside him urged him to try again. He saddled his horse, a sturdy chestnut named Jack, and rode out toward the river. As he approached her homestead, he saw Nia sitting by the fire again, just like before. This time, there were a few other members of her tribe with her, including an older man who Sam recognized as Nia's uncle. Sam felt a slight pang of nervousness, but he pushed it down. He had to speak to her, to at least try to understand her. As Sam approached, Nia looked up, her sharp eyes scanning him for a moment before she gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. This time, she didn't seem as cold, though she still kept a respectful distance. I see you've come back, she said, her voice steady, but there was a hint of curiosity in her tone. Sam dismounted and approached the fire, taking a seat on the ground beside her. I wanted to talk, he said, his voice honest but soft. About what we talked about before. Nia raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. The flames danced between them, casting flickering shadows over their faces. Sam could see her more clearly now, the deep lines of experience etched into her face, the strength in her posture. He had come to admire her, but he knew it was more than admiration. There was something about her that made him feel more alive, more awake. "You warned me that we couldn't love each other," Sam said, his voice low. "But I don't think it's about love, Nia. I think it's about trust. It's about finding a way to live side by side even if we're different." Nia didn't speak immediately. Instead, she looked at the fire, watching the flames crackle and shift. She was silent for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Sam didn't rush her, he let her take her time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, almost as though she were talking to herself. "You don't understand," she said softly. "My people have lived here for centuries. We don't just live on the land, we are the land. We are the river, the mountains, the sky. Everything around us is a part of us. And when people like you come here, you take it. You take what isn't yours. You don't ask for permission. You don't understand the way it feels to see your land ripped apart, to watch strangers take it and call it their own." Sam's heart sank as he listened to her. He had heard the stories before, of course. The settlers coming to take land, the clashes between the tribes and the newcomers. But hearing it from Nia, seeing the pain in her eyes, made it feel real in a way that it never had before. "I didn't come here to take anything from you," Sam said, his voice steady but gentle. "I came because my family worked hard to build something, but I know that doesn't make it right. I understand now that this land means more to you than it does to me." Nia's eyes flickered toward him, and for the first time, Sam thought he saw a glimmer of something soft in her gaze, not warmth exactly, but a kind of understanding. She nodded slowly, though she didn't speak. The silence stretched between them again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was more like two people who were starting to understand each other, even though they couldn't quite bridge the gap that lay between their worlds. For the next few weeks, Sam made a point of visiting Nia regularly. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for: friendship, understanding, or maybe just the chance to show her that he wasn't like the others. Each time he visited, they talked more. They spoke about their lives, their families, their hopes. Sam told Nia about his father's ranch, the hard work it took to run it, and the pride he felt in being a part of something that had lasted for generations. Nia shared stories of her people, of the customs and traditions that had been passed down from one generation to the next. She spoke of the land, of the river that ran through their territory, of the deep connection her people had to it. Though their conversations were often quiet and sometimes awkward, there was an unspoken understanding growing between them. Sam began to see the world through Nia's eyes, at least a little. He began to understand the weight of the history that she carried with her, the burden of being a part of something so ancient and sacred. And Nia, in turn, began to see that Sam wasn't like the other settlers she had known. He wasn't here to take. He was here to build, to work, to try and make something of his own. He had his flaws, of course, but he wasn't the enemy. But there were still obstacles between them. Nia's people were cautious, wary of Sam's visits. They had seen too many outsiders come and go, promising respect and understanding, only to leave when things got hard. Sam's own community wasn't much better. The other ranchers and farmers in the area didn't understand his interest in Nia or her people. They saw them as a threat, as outsiders who didn't belong in the land they had claimed as their own. There were whispers, small insults here and there, though Sam tried to ignore them. Still, he couldn't deny the tension that had begun to build. One evening, a few months after their first meeting, Sam and Nia sat by the fire again. This time, there was no tension between them, no awkwardness. They had become comfortable in each other's presence, in the quiet understanding they had built. "I've been thinking," Sam said, his voice steady. "I know we can't change the past. I can't change what my people have done, and you can't change what yours have had to endure. But I think we can start from here. From now, I think we can find a way to make this work." Nia looked at him, her dark eyes unreadable for a moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Maybe," she said softly, "maybe there's a way." And for the first time, Sam felt a small spark of hope. The days stretched into weeks, and Sam's visits to Nia's homestead became more frequent. Each time, their bond grew stronger. They spoke less of land and more of themselves, their dreams, their struggles, and their personal losses. Sam learned about Nia's life, her family, and the pain she carried from the past. She had lost her father in a violent raid when she was just a child. Her mother, too, had passed away when Nia was still young, leaving her with the responsibility of caring for her younger brother and keeping the family traditions alive. In return, Sam opened up about his own struggles, his fear of losing the ranch, the pressure to live up to his father's legacy, and the loneliness he sometimes felt in his work. Though their worlds were so different, there was a quiet understanding between them, an acknowledgement that both had suffered in their own ways. Sam had never truly known the weight of loss until he saw the depth of it in Nia's eyes. And Nia, over time, began to see Sam not as a settler who had come to take her land, but as a man who carried his own burdens and was simply trying to make a life for himself. But even as their connection deepened, a new conflict began to surface, one that neither of them could ignore. The more Sam saw Nia, the more his feelings for her grew. He admired her strength, her wisdom, and the way she carried herself with such dignity. He couldn't deny that he had fallen for her, despite the complexities of their situation. But at the same time, Nia seemed more distant than ever. Her warmth was undeniable, but there was always a wall between them, an invisible barrier that Sam couldn't seem to cross. One evening, as Sam sat by the fire with Nia, he noticed something different in her behavior. There was a quiet sadness in her eyes, something she had never shown before. He had grown used to her stoic demeanor, but tonight, something felt off. "Nia," he said gently, breaking the silence between them, "what's on your mind? You seem different tonight." Nia didn't look at him immediately. She stared into the fire, her eyes flickering with the flames. After a long pause, she spoke in a low, almost hesitant voice. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her words slow and deliberate, "about finding a way for us to work together, about making this work." Sam watched her closely, his heart quickening. He knew this conversation was important, but he didn't know what to expect. "And what did you think?" he asked, his voice soft, giving her the space to share her thoughts. Nia's gaze finally met his, and there was something vulnerable in her eyes that Sam hadn't seen before. "I don't know if it can work, Sam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if it's possible," Sam frowned, leaning forward slightly. "What do you mean? You said there could be a way." Nia shook her head, her expression clouding over with uncertainty. "I'm not talking about land. I'm talking about us, about what it means to be together. You live in a world that I don't belong to, and I live in a world that you can never fully understand. The traditions I follow, the life I've been taught to live, it's not something that can be easily set aside." Sam's heart sank as he realized what she was saying. She was distancing herself from him, not because of land or culture, but because of the emotional walls she had built around herself. Nia was afraid of what might happen if they got too close, afraid of the pain that would come with a love she couldn't allow herself to have. "I understand," Sam said quietly, though he didn't fully. "But Nia, we don't have to give up who we are. We can be ourselves and still find a way to be together. I don't want you to change, and I don't want to change either. We can keep our traditions, our families, and still—" His words trailed off as he saw the look in her eyes. It was a look of sorrow, as though she knew something he didn't. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could speak, a voice interrupted them. "Nia, there you are." The voice was sharp, filled with urgency. Sam looked up to see a tall man approaching, one Sam recognized as Nia's uncle, Cale. He was a respected elder in the Apache tribe, known for his wisdom but also his strictness. His eyes were dark with concern, and his gaze flickered to Sam with barely concealed disapproval. Nia stood quickly, a subtle tension in her posture. "What is it, Uncle Cale?" she asked, her tone neutral but edged with unease. Cale's eyes lingered on Sam for a moment before he spoke, his voice low but firm. "The council is calling a meeting. They want to discuss the settlers." "It's not safe for you to be here, Nia. You need to come with me." Nia hesitated for a moment, glancing back at Sam. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that Sam couldn't quite place, but she nodded slowly and turned to Cale. "I'll come with you," she said, her voice steady. Sam remained seated, watching them both. His heart was heavy with the weight of her words from earlier, and now, with her uncle's arrival, he felt an even greater sense of urgency. Nia was being pulled away from him, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep fighting for something that seemed so out of reach. As Nia turned to leave, she paused for a moment, then glanced back at Sam. Her expression was softer now, though still filled with a quiet sorrow. "I'll see you soon," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, and with that she followed her uncle into the shadows, leaving Sam alone by the fire. He stayed there for a long time, staring into the flames, his mind swirling with thoughts he couldn't sort through. What had just happened? What had Nia meant by her words? He knew that something deep inside him had changed, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized how much of their future was uncertain. The next few days were difficult for Sam. He continued his work on the ranch, but his thoughts kept returning to Nia. She hadn't come back to see him. He hadn't seen her since that night by the fire. Her absence felt like a weight on his chest. It was as if she had vanished from his life just as quickly as she had entered it. He didn't know what to do, but he knew one thing: he couldn't give up on her. He couldn't just let her walk away. So one afternoon, Sam decided to do something he hadn't done before. He rode out to Nia's homestead again, this time determined to find her, to talk to her, to understand what was happening. As he approached, his heart beat faster. He wasn't sure what kind of reception he would get, but he had to try. When he arrived, Nia was sitting alone by the fire again, her face unreadable. She looked up as Sam dismounted, but she didn't stand. She didn't say anything. "Nia," Sam said softly, his voice filled with urgency. "I can't stop thinking about what you said. I know you're afraid, but I need you to understand something. I can't walk away from this. I can't walk away from you." Nia's eyes flickered with something, maybe surprise, maybe pain, but she didn't speak. She simply looked at him, as though she were waiting for him to say more. "I don't care about the past," Sam continued, his voice steady. "I don't care about what's come before. I care about what we can do together, about what we can build. I know it's not easy. I know it's not perfect, but I believe in us, Nia. I believe in what we can have." For the first time, Nia stood and walked toward him. She didn't say anything, but the intensity in her eyes was enough. Sam could see the battle raging within her, the conflict between the love she felt and the duty she couldn't escape. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say a word, the sound of hooves approaching interrupted them. The story continues to unfold in a way that neither Sam nor Nia could have predicted. Days passed, and the sense of tension in the air grew thicker. Sam's heart remained heavy, his thoughts consumed by Nia. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she had looked at him the last time they spoke, her unreadable eyes filled with so much unspoken emotion. He had promised himself that he would never give up on her, no matter what. But he had started to realize that things were more complicated than he had imagined. The conflict between their worlds was deeper than just land and culture. It was a matter of survival, of tradition, and of identity. Nia had been born into a life that was governed by laws older than the land itself. Her people had survived on these laws for generations, and to turn her back on them would be to turn her back on everything she knew. Sam had grown up on the ranch, where hard work and perseverance were the only rules that mattered. But he realized, as he spent more time with Nia, that their differences weren't just about the land. They were about who they were as people. They came from different worlds, and no matter how strong their connection was, there were forces beyond their control that would always keep them apart. Despite this, Sam refused to let go. He visited Nia's homestead every day, hoping that things would change, that somehow they would find a way to make it work. But each time he came, Nia seemed more distant, more withdrawn. The warmth that had once been there between them had faded, replaced by a quiet sadness that lingered in her eyes. Sam could see the weight of her decision pressing down on her, and he knew that she was struggling with something much bigger than their relationship. One afternoon, Sam rode out to see Nia again, determined to find some answer. The sky was darkening with clouds and the wind had picked up, rustling the dry grass on the plains. As he approached her homestead, he saw Nia sitting alone by the fire, her face turned toward the horizon. She looked so small, so distant, and for a moment Sam hesitated. But he couldn't stop now. He needed to know the truth. He dismounted from his horse and walked toward her, his boots crunching on the dry earth. When she heard him approaching, Nia didn't look up. She didn't acknowledge his presence, but Sam didn't mind. He had learned over the past few months that Nia was a woman of few words, and that when she was ready to speak, she would. "Nia," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of his concern. "I need to talk to you." This time, Nia didn't say anything at first. She simply kept staring into the distance, her hands resting in her lap. Sam sat down beside her, close enough that he could feel the warmth of the fire but not too close to invade her space. "I can see something's changed," Sam continued. "I know you've been pulling away. And I don't understand why. I thought we were starting to figure things out." Nia turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting his for the first time in days. There was a sadness in them, a quiet kind of pain that Sam couldn't ignore. "I've been thinking a lot," Nia said, her voice quiet and steady. "About us, about you and me, about what this thing between us really means." Sam felt his heart tighten. He had known this conversation was coming, but he wasn't prepared for the weight of it. He had hoped for so long that their bond could survive the pressures of their different worlds. But now, as he looked into Nia's eyes, he realized that she had already made up her mind. "I can't be with you, Sam," Nia said, her voice breaking slightly. "I can't keep pretending that this can work. I know you think we can find a way, but the truth is we can't. Our worlds are too different. My people will never accept you, and your people will never accept me. If we're together, we'll just be torn apart." Sam's heart dropped. He had known deep down that this might be the outcome, but hearing it from Nia, hearing the finality in her voice, was harder than he had imagined. He had hoped that love, or at least a connection, could overcome everything. But the truth was staring him in the face. There were too many obstacles, too many forces working against them. "I don't care what anyone else thinks," Sam said, his voice rising with a mixture of frustration and desperation. "I care about you. I care about what we have. I don't care if the world doesn't understand. I don't care if it's hard, I just want to be with you." Nia shook her head slowly, her face a mixture of sorrow and resignation. "You don't understand, Sam. I wish I could be with you. I really do. But my people won't let me. They'll never accept this. I'm already an outsider to them, and if I stay with you, I'll lose everything. I'll lose my family, my place in the tribe. I'll lose my identity, and I can't do that." Sam was silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never truly understood what it meant to belong to something greater than himself, to be bound by a community's expectations and traditions. But now, as he listened to Nia's words, he understood. She couldn't just choose him. She couldn't just walk away from her people, her traditions, the life she had always known. "I love you," Sam said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I'll love you no matter what happens, but I understand. I understand that you have to do what's best for you, for your people. I just want you to be happy." Nia's eyes filled with tears, and she looked away, her hand brushing her face in an attempt to hide the emotion. Sam wanted to reach out to her to comfort her, but he knew that nothing he said could change what she had already decided. She had made up her mind, and nothing would make her change it. "I'm sorry," Nia said, her voice shaky. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I can't be with you, Sam, not like this. It's not fair to either of us." Sam didn't know what to say. He felt a deep ache in his chest, a hollow feeling that seemed to reach all the way to his soul. He had never felt more helpless in his life. The woman he loved, the one person who had made him feel like he was truly alive, was slipping away, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The silence between them grew heavy, and Sam felt a coldness in the air that had nothing to do with the evening chill. He didn't know how long they sat there, side by side, neither of them speaking. The fire crackled in front of them, but it couldn't warm the cold that had settled in Sam's heart. Finally, Nia stood up, her posture rigid as she wiped the last of her tears away. She looked at Sam one last time, her expression soft but resolute. "I have to go," she said, her voice steady now. "I need to be with my people." Sam nodded, unable to speak. He watched as Nia turned and walked away, her figure blending into the shadows of the night. He sat there for a long time, his heart heavy with sorrow. He had hoped so desperately that they could find a way, but sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes the forces of the world, tradition, duty, and the expectations of others were stronger than anything two people could share. As Sam stood up and walked back to his horse, he knew that he had lost Nia. And though his heart ached with the weight of that loss, he also knew that, in some strange way, he would always carry her with him. The love they had shared, even for just a brief moment, would be something that would stay with him forever. The sun seemed to rise and set with a sense of finality, as though the world had shifted in a way he couldn't control. Every part of him felt heavy, like the weight of the land itself had settled on his shoulders. He threw himself into his work on the ranch, trying to keep busy, trying to push the thoughts of Nia from his mind. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't forget her. Her face, her voice, the way she had looked at him with such sorrow that night, they haunted him. At first, Sam had tried to hold on to hope, telling himself that Nia would come back. He had convinced himself that, in time, she would realize that the love they shared was worth the sacrifices. But the days turned into weeks, and she never came. He had sent messages, hoping for a sign, but there was nothing in return. He could feel the distance growing, not just between them, but between him and everything else. He became more isolated, retreating into the quiet of the ranch, where everything seemed to stand still. But despite the pain, Sam never regretted the time he had spent with Nia. He didn't regret loving her, even though it had cost him more than he had ever expected. In a strange way, he felt proud of what they had shared. It was real, even if it hadn't lasted. It had been a love that had defied expectations, a love that had crossed boundaries that seemed insurmountable. It had been a reminder that sometimes, the things that are most worth fighting for are also the most impossible to keep. The turning point came one late afternoon, when the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, as it often was in the west. Sam was out by the barn, checking the cattle, when he heard the sound of hooves approaching. He turned, half expecting to see one of the local ranchers, but when he looked up, his breath caught in his throat. It was Nia. She was riding toward him, her silhouette framed by the setting sun, just as she had been the first time he had seen her. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Sam's heart skipped a beat and his body felt frozen in place. Nia slowed her horse as she neared him, her eyes searching his face. Sam didn't know what to say. So much had changed since their last meeting. So much had been left unsaid. But seeing her again after all this time brought everything rushing back, the good and the bad, the joy and the heartbreak. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Sam just stood there watching her. He could see the weariness in her face, the same sorrow that had been there when she left. She had changed, but then again, so had he. There was something different in the way they both looked at each other now. Something that had shifted, but also something that had endured. Finally, Nia broke the silence, her voice soft and uncertain. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her words almost lost in the breeze. "I needed to see you." Sam's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to reach out, to hold her, but another part of him knew that it wasn't that simple. They had both made choices that had led them down different paths. Still, the pull between them was undeniable, and in that moment, Sam couldn't deny that he still loved her. "I didn't think you'd come back," Sam said, his voice low but steady. "I thought you made your decision. I thought you were gone for good." Nia looked down, her hands tightening on the reins of her horse. "I did make a decision," she said quietly, "but it wasn't the right one." Sam's heart clenched at her words. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "I've spent so much time trying to do what was expected of me," Nia said, her eyes clouded with regret. "I thought I had to choose between you and my people, between what I wanted and what I was supposed to do, but I've realized something." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I can't live my life for other people. I can't ignore what I feel." Sam felt a wave of relief wash over him. He stepped closer, his heart racing. "Nia, you don't have to choose. You don't have to give up who you are." Nia's gaze softened and she slid off her horse, standing in front of Sam. She didn't say anything at first, but the way she looked at him spoke volumes. She had come back, and for the first time in months, Sam felt a glimmer of hope. "I know what you said before," Nia continued, her voice steady now, "that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. But the truth is, it does matter. It matters to me, and it matters to you. But I've come to realize that maybe there's a way we can find a balance. Maybe we don't have to completely abandon who we are. Maybe we can find a way to be together without losing everything else." Sam felt his breath catch in his throat. He had never dared to hope for this, for her to come back and say that. For her to say that there could be a way for them. "I'm not asking you to abandon your people," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm not asking you to walk away from your traditions, but I don't want to lose you. I don't want to live a life without you in it." Nia looked at him, her eyes searching his face for something. Then, with a slow, almost hesitant smile, she stepped closer to him. "Maybe we don't have to lose each other," she said softly. "Maybe we can find a way to be together. Maybe we can start a new kind of life, one where we don't have to choose, one where we can both belong." Sam felt a rush of emotion flood through him, his chest tightening as he took her hands in his. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to let her go. He had spent too many days thinking about what they had lost, but now, standing here with her, he realized that they still had a chance. A real chance. "I'm willing to fight for us," Sam said, his voice strong. "I don't care what it takes. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work, to make you happy, to make us both happy." Nia's eyes softened, and for a moment Sam thought he saw a tear glisten in her eye. But she didn't say anything. She just smiled, the weight of everything that had come before lifting for the first time in what felt like forever. "We'll figure it out, Sam," she said quietly, "together." And as they stood there, side by side, with the sun setting behind them and the land stretching out before them, Sam felt a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't the peace that came from easy answers or simple solutions, but the kind of peace that came from knowing they would face whatever came next together. Though they didn't know what the future held, Sam and Nia made a silent promise that day. A promise that they would keep fighting for each other, no matter the obstacles, no matter the challenges. They would find a way to make it work, and that was enough.